Welcome to episode 51 of the Losses Above Replacement podcast. I'm Splash, joined with Mac and Alex today. On the docket today, we have the Cy Young Award, the MVP Award. Those have been locked up. We're going to talk about the new contract that Aaron Nola signed with the Philadelphia Phillies, and we're going to check out the first-timers who are on this year's Hall of Fame ballot. Welcome to Losses Above Replacement, and roll that intro, Alex.
Thank you,
Beautiful.
Alex. That was fantastic.
That was actually beautiful. The alternate joke was Alex saying, "What, Splash? We don't have an intro," and then we would use that as the intro clip. So, good on you, Alex.
You should know at this point I like doing improv. I will try my best if I get the opportunity.
This is true. All right,
I
how are you
thought that
guys
was a
doing
great
this
effort.
morning? How are you guys doing this November evening?
I'm doing all right. Glad that we have a short week at work, so I get a little extra time to rest. But it's fun here. I've been working a bit on mental health stuff, so I'm trying to get my head back on straight. But I'm excited that football has at least been interesting this year. Has it been great? Maybe not so much, but it's been interesting at least.
From a sports perspective, I'll say this week was not the best. Let's just put it this way. The Steelers lost to the Browns. Syracuse football lost to Georgia Tech. Then the next day, they fired their head coach. And today, Syracuse lost to Tennessee in the first day of the Maui Invitational in basketball. To be fair, Tennessee's the sixth-ranked team in the country. I don't know what else I expected. And I thought they battled well until the final minutes of the game. But other than that, I competed actually over the weekend. I learned the hard way that it's not so easy to get up and do multiple races in a day. The older you get, it turns out the more difficult that becomes. So other than that, it's fun though. I enjoy competition. That's why I still swim. So yeah, I'm doing all right. Hopefully this storm doesn't mess up my family's Thanksgiving plans too badly.
Yeah, we had our power went out today. I don't know if it was storm related or if it was just like Dominion Energy being a bozo for a couple hours, but glad that it is back on and we can record tonight. So without further ado, it was nearly unanimous in award season. Rookie of the Year, both leagues was unanimous. Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll. MVP in both leagues was unanimous with Ronald Acuna in the National League, Shohei Ohtani in the American League. American League Cy Young was unanimous with Garrett Cole, and Blake Snell received 28 of 30 first place votes for National League Cy Young, so just 2 votes away from being fully unanimous. Let's talk about the NL Cy Young. The only sort of disagreement was Blake Snell versus Zach Gallen versus Logan Webb. Did you guys think that Webb and Gallen were worthy 2-3s, or do you think that voters kind of wasted their vote this year?
I don't think Gallen was a wasted vote at all. I think Gallen was well deserving of a vote on this one. And it really, again, comes down to ideology. Like we talked about, I think, on last week's podcast, we got into a bit of a heated debate talking about how important walk rate is to a pitcher. And just, yes, Blake Snell had an incredible ERA plus, was an amazing pitcher, but also didn't have a whole lot of innings thrown, had a missed, threw a lot of walks out there, and so it really comes down to ideology. And it looks like a lot of the writers agree with you, Splash. And honestly, after thinking about it more, I'm not gonna say I fully agree, but I understand it. I understand the reasoning for it, but I don't think that Gallen was a bad vote in any way, shape, or form. He put together an amazing season.
Yeah, I think really it's that the other two, Webb especially, I think they appease more to the old school mindset. Webb led the majors in innings pitched with 216. He also only issued 31 walks, so he had the lowest walk rate, walks per nine, at least in the majors at 1.3, and the best strikeout to walk ratio at 6.26. And Gallen also threw over 200 innings, 210 innings. And I guess he's sort of the in between there because he also racked up 220 strikeouts. Yeah, so I think it's more of what your mindset is. I think Snell is definitely a case where he's probably got the best stuff of the three, and he was the best at preventing runs. But if you're more of the old school mindset where you want a guy who pitches 200, 210 innings like both Webb and Gallen did, then I understand why those two did get some votes. Now the more I think about it, there's a reason probably why, as much as I love this guy, Kodai Senga only threw 166 innings this year. So now it makes a little more sense why he finished a little further down the ballot. But I think I understand the mindset of why Gallen and Webb both got first place votes.
I'm a little surprised that someone didn't go rogue and vote for Spencer Strider. MLB, social media kept pushing Strider as a Cy Young candidate deep into the season, and Justin Steele as well. And then they had a couple ugly starts in August and September that kind of threw a wrench in them winning, but I'm surprised the voting wasn't a little bit more splintered there. I will say Blake Snell was clearly the best at preventing runs, and a lot of the times that's the name of the game. His ERA was a run lower than Webb's and almost a run and a quarter lower than Gallen's. And sometimes that's a big difference. In the American League, Garrett Cole's ERA was only better than Sonny Gray's by 0.16 runs and was better than Kevin Gausman's by about half a run. So sometimes it's just that lapping effect that if Snell had, say, a 2.65 ERA, I think it's much, much closer and certainly not close to unanimous. But I do agree with you, Mac. I thought Senga should have been higher. But to wrap up with Snell, is Blake Snell a top 5 pitcher in baseball? I know he won the Cy Young, but looking at next season, do you expect him to be a top 5 pitcher again? Do you think this is more of a flash in the pan sort of deal? What are we thinking moving forward?
I don't want to call it a flash in the pan necessarily, but I don't expect him to replicate a 2.0 ERA. Unfortunately, when you walk 5 batters per 9 and have the strand rate that he did, I just don't think that's sustainable. Do I think Snell is a good pitcher? Yes. Do I think he's top 5? No. Do I think he's going to win a Cy Young next year? No. So I think if his walks were lower, and if his command was better, then yes. But it's too much of a risk for me.
Yeah. I really don't want to call it a flash in the pan because he is an amazing pitcher.
He's won a Cy Young in the past too.
He's won 2 Cy Youngs now. So at this point, yep. But that's kind of the key here, is that he has been a little bit streaky overall. There are times where he is the best pitcher in baseball, and there's times where a third, fourth starter. And because you take a look at his stats over the years, after his Cy Young award in 2018, his ERA ballooned the next year to 4.29. And then in 2020, the shortened season, it was a 3.24. Then it went up in 2021 to a very nice 4.20. Then went down to 3.38, and then this year to 2.25. I think it's going to be good next year, but there's one other thing I want to kind of bring up here, and that is the strategy that he used to get this. And that is, again, what we were talking about, of making sure that you walk the better hitters in these situations in order to get to the not top level hitters, right? Well, that works all well and good when you get those next people out, which, don't get me wrong, yes, it is easier to get them out, but it's also extremely risky. It only works if you pull it off correctly and you have the skills to pull it off. And a lot of times, even if you are the better player, sometimes it may not come through. So this is he deserves it this year because what he pulled off was incredible. But it's going to come down to, for him going forward, with how risky of an idea this is, you still have to be able to pull it through. You got to be able to succeed anytime you can.
This is fair. If there was a Major League Cy Young award, would you have voted for Garrett Cole or Blake Snell?
Cole.
I think we're unanimous there.
Yeah, and the thing with Cole is that also he led the American League in not only just ERA, he led in innings pitched too. So, and 222 strikeouts. And he led in WHIP, and ERA plus, and had the lowest hits per 9 in the American League. So I think overall he was the more well-rounded pitcher.
Not only is how I see it is Cole, everything good that Snell did, Cole did that and more. I'm not gonna say that Snell is just being completely overshadowed here, but the main thing that we've been talking about when it comes to Snell is his strikeouts, his ERA, and his ERA plus. Right. So you take that with Cole, and he does that, plus also being a workhorse, does not walk near as many people, and has done a lot of other metrics a lot better. So it's still close. Like, don't get me wrong, both guys are amazing pitchers this year, but with the year that Cole put together, it's hard not to say he's number one.
This is fair. Let's jump over to the AL Cy Young. Cole finishes 1, Sonny Gray behind him, Gosman 3, Bradish 4, Luis Castillo 5. Some other notables: Zach Eflin, the Rays propaganda machine, continues. He finished 6th. Alex's guy, George Kirby, finished 8th. And Braves anti-hero Chris Martin and Coldplay legend finished 12th. So shout out to the Boston
Got
Red
one
Sox
vote.
there.
Yep.
Let's go.
Any big takeaways from a pretty cut and dry Cy Young race?
I will say this one thing, right? So the fact that there are 2 Seattle Mariners in the top 7 or so is we take those W's. We take those W's, we stay eaten. No, I mean, both players played amazing this year, and I think especially on our side of things, right? Like Mac, I think it was both you and I talked about how good we thought Kirby was going to be at the start of this year, and now look, he's one of the top 10 pitchers in the American League. Like, that's a kid who has really stepped it up this year. But I do want to say, just overall, Cole's year was incredible. And as good as, Sonny Gray did, and a lot of people thought Sonny Gray was going to be the Cy Young at the beginning of the year after how well he started, Cole just kept it going and did not stop. So that's my piece.
Yeah, I think this was long overdue for Cole. I thought he should have won in 2019. And for a while, I remember when he was on the Pirates, I kept thinking, like, when is Garrett Cole going to win a Cy Young? And I mean, to me, it's surprising that it took him this long to get one. I think, it's kind of like Paul Goldschmidt with the National League MVP. You're like, for a while, it was like, man, when is Goldschmidt going to get one? He's been runner up a couple of times. So Cole finally gets one, and I think he was far and away the best pitcher in the American League, if not all of baseball this year. I mean, like I was mentioning earlier, led the league in ERA and innings pitched. Plus, he was a high strikeout guy, too. I mean, there's a brief period where people were wondering, like, is Garrett Cole going to burn out? Is his contract not going to be worth it? And I think so far, while the Yankees have not gotten a ring out of it, he's been worth pretty much every penny of that deal. So props to him. I mean, I think he's really shutting down any haters that he's had so far.
Absolutely. You saw Yankees fans all over Twitter pulling out the receipts from Cole's, I'm not going to say lackluster 2022. He was still fine, but it's one of those years that he just wasn't that guy. It's just like a good year, but not a great year when you expect Garrett Cole to be an ace every time out. And he was an ace this year. He was unbelievable. The Yankees, he was at a 15-4 record, which is, I know wins and losses, whatever, but it's hard to be a bad pitcher and go 15-4, just throwing it out there. Let's jump into the MVP conversation. Shohei Ohtani unanimous in the AL, Ronald Acuna unanimous in the NL. So not much at the top that we get to discuss here. Who's a guy in the middle of the pack or lower, maybe outside the top 3, that you think will win an MVP in the next 5 years? Mac, we'll start with you. You can go AL, NL, doesn't matter.
Oh boy, this is a tough one. But I think I feel like this is kind of the low-hanging fruit here, but Julio Rodriguez, I mean, he was 4th in MVP this year, and that was with kind of an up and down first half, to say the least. I mean, really, he had a fantastic second half of the season, helped the Mariners get back into the playoff race. So I think Julio, I believe he was 4th this year, but I really think that we're going to see him win an MVP. It also will hinge on where Ohtani is playing down the line,
of course,
because he's obviously going to be a front runner every single year. But if Ohtani leaves the American League, I think it's hard to not see J-Rod as a favorite heading even into just next season.
Yeah,
Alex?
I mean, I can't disagree with that at all. Yeah, he was giving me my pick as well. I mean, yes, it's the homer pick. I get it. But at the same time, the kid is just so dang good. You look at what Julio does, he does everything correctly. And honestly, the biggest knock on him is that he started out the year pretty poorly, which, to be fair, is also consistent from 2022.
I was going to mention that, yeah.
Yeah, which is, don't get me wrong, definitely a bit worrisome, considering the fact of that if that continues, that's going to make any level of MVP candidacy feel a bit short. But overall, I do think, like I said in an earlier podcast during Rent Roulette, I do think that he will be an MVP very, very soon. But like Max said as well, it's really going to come down to where Ohtani goes. And hopefully he's going to be wearing a Seattle Mariner hat, but we'll talk about that later. But I anywhere that Ohtani goes, he's going to be the favorites because of everything that we've talked about before. But I do think that outside of the top three, it's Julio.
So I'll do a little rapid fire here. Bobby Witt, 7th in the American League. Adley Rutschman, 9th in the American League. Lewis Robert, 12th in the American League, especially if he gets traded. National League, Austin Riley, 7th in the 7th. Fernando Tatis tied for 14th. Those are two guys that I think the offense, at least with Riley, the offense is there and the defense is improving. Tatis was unbelievable in right field defensively. And the bat wasn't quite there, but the first 5 years of his career, he was unbelievable at the plate, like historic. Granted, it was at shortstop, but historic production there. So if either of them have a great season at the plate and a great season in the field, Riley was pretty close this year. Just a little bit more production at the plate. Just he had horrible production with men on. And then Tatis, if he gets back to what he was doing as a younger player with the power, he had 42 home runs in a season. If he does that again with the elite glove and right, then I think you're talking about some MVP guys there. Witt in the American League. If the Royals are anywhere relevant, it's going to be the Bobby Witt show. Same thing with the White Sox and Luis Robert. And then Adley, Orioles won 100 games this year. He was pretty good, not like elite or anything. The OPS is great for a catcher. I had him picked as my American League Silver Slugger, but the defense wasn't quite as good as it was as a rookie. So he took a little bit of a step back, but I think he can, in year 3, could be a potential MVP candidate there. So one parting thought here, Shohei Ohtani as a DH only, where would you rank him in the MVP consideration? Just generally, because we don't know what team he's going to be on, but generally, is he like the front runner?
No.
Is he top 3?
I don't think he's top 5. I think that as a pure hitter, like, don't get me wrong, he's good. He's very, very good as a pure hitter. But what makes him so valuable is the fact that he is a pitcher and a hitter. When you take away that pitching, he becomes, you got to look at him like he's just a hitter, through just the hitting lens. And his hitting stats, again, were great, but they're not MVP levels.
Just as a DH, by the way, too. So there's no, like, Ronald plays right, or Betts plays right, or Judge plays right. They play good defense, in theory, play good defense.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So at that point, it's just then, okay, you're putting up this guy's bat against all these players' bats or arms or fielding ability. This was the big conversation we had in 2022 with the MVP going to Aaron Judge. Was two different people. When you took a look at the two players between Judge and Ohtani, you basically had to see what's more valuable: Ohtani's bat and his pitching, or Judge's bat and his fielding, because they both became, in a weird sense, two-way players, two things that you were judging them on. And that's why you ended up giving it to Judge, is that you thought that his defense was better than what Ohtani brought as a pitcher. And you know what? To people's credit, that's fine. People could think that. I disagree, but I digress. But that's what it kind of boils down to. When you take away that full edge away from Ohtani, you take away a ton of value. And is he still going to be in the top 10? Yeah, probably. He's a dang good hitter, and one that it could slot into basically any spot on any team's lineup. But he's not top 5.
I will throw it out there with Ohtani that he was 4th in the American League in position player WAR and 2nd in offensive WAR. And keep in mind, he missed the last month of the season, and he had the wear and tear of pitching every 5 days. So I think he's still top 3. I think he's in that conversation, because when you can, across 135 games, he slashed 304, 412, 654, led the league in OPS and OPS plus. led the American League in total bases despite missing 27 games, still led the AL with 44 home runs. So if you're looking at a guy who hits 45 to 50 home runs, is going to walk 100 times or so, that's tough to like overlook. I know he's even as a DH, that's tough to overlook. So
He's
if he
pretty
has another,
fast too.
That's true.
Yeah, didn't have 20 steals this year. So if he slashes say 300, 400, 650 again and plays the full season, hits 50 home runs, I think he's going to be really tough to top. Then you need one of those sort of outlier seasons. Like I think if you just strip away the pitching production, but he plays in September, I think there's a reasonable shot he still wins MVP in the American League. National League, I think Acuna and Betts would have passed him with the all-around production, and Acuna stealing 70 bases, Betts defensive versatility. But I still think Ohtani probably wins AL MVP just as a hitter if he had played in September.
So here's the thing, though. It's that you mentioned it, the defense. I mean, he's a DH. We've never seen a full-time DH win MVP. Edgar Martinez never won it. David Ortiz never won it. JD Martinez hasn't. Yordan Alvarez still hasn't. Like, there's so many great guys who have been, exclusively DHs who, as they can hit as much as they want, but they a lot of times they don't even finish in the top 5 in MVP voting. I think Ohtani does enough where he can probably be top 5, but it's hard to consider him a front runner, like Alex said, when you take away that pitching, because when he's on top of his game, he's like an ace caliber pitcher to boot. And unfortunately, he's not going to be able to show any of that in 2024. I think down the line, though, once he's back to pitching, he's going to be the front runner every single year.
Yeah.
I will say that the difference is the dominance. So with Ortiz and Yordan and Edgar and guys like that, they often weren't leading the league or like being the best hitter in the league, like in a season, right? So you take out Ortiz's best seasons, you take out Yordan's best seasons, you take out Edgar's best seasons, and generally they weren't necessarily the best hitter in the league. So if you're trying to win the MVP as a DH, you kind of need to be the best hitter in the league. So StatHead's being a little slow for me, but if you take primary DHs, and given that they qualify for the batting title, the highest OPS plus among them, I believe, is Ohtani. And that just sets a different level of production here, that Ohtani is doing these sorts of things as a DH, right? And yeah, of course, there's no defensive production there, and the base running is good, so don't get me wrong there. But for primary DHs, the highest OPS plus in a season is, so Yordan last year, 2022, he split time between DH and left, so he didn't play in one. He didn't like qualify for either. Then there's Edgar, a 185 in 1995, but he played some third and some first as well. So then Ohtani's right behind Edgar at 184. So that's just a rounding error, essentially. So if Ohtani plays a full season and he has this sort of production, I think he can win MVP in a lot of years. Maybe not every single season, but a lot of years, I think he still wins MVP.
My problem that I have with it overall is just kind of like, we know how a lot of the voters think. And to be fair, like we've said earlier, where like with guys like Edgar and with Ortiz, there are a lot of different factors that go into it that they claim it is, even if it's not 100% true. Personally, like I said, if you're mashing 50 home runs and your OPS is over 1,000, I don't care what your defense is. You are the best hitter. You should win the MVP. But at the same exact time, that's going to be the argument, though, is that, there's no defense to add anything to it. Whereas, are we going to say that someone that plays defense, that plays every day both sides of the ball is... Sorry, I just completely lost some train of thought there. Someone that plays defense doesn't deserve it just because they're not as great of a hitter? I do I want Ohtani to be in the top 5 as a DH, if anything, just to show the representation for DHs everywhere. I'm still always salty about Edgar. He was one of my favorite players of all time. But I just don't know if I can see it. I want to see it. I don't know if I can.
So before we move on, here's a wild stat. In Major League history, there have only been 5 DHs to lead the league in OPS plus. All of them naturally were American League players because the National League hasn't had the DH long enough. And there have been 7 seasons in which the primary DH, 75% of the games played, led the league in OPS. So OPS leaders, Edgar, Ohtani, Hafner, Victor Martinez, Ortiz, Milton Bradley, and Hal McRae. And then OPS plus leaders, Edgar, Ohtani, Hafner, Milton Bradley, and Hafner again in 2004, 2006. So I wouldn't rule it out for Ohtani winning the MVP just as a DH.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, that's no, I agree. I just don't think it'll be. I don't think it's very likely. Although I guess in the modern game, maybe it will be. Maybe it is slightly more likely.
Do you think he'd have a better chance winning the MVP in the AL or NL next year?
That's tough. I think I'd say AL.
I'm going to agree with the AL. I think the National League. I mean, we saw it alone with the top 4 this year. I mean, that was a dogfight. I mean, probably any other year Mookie Betts wins MVP, except you have Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman or Matt Olson would probably all be considered the front runner, except Acuna did something historic. So I think probably the American League.
So speaking of historic, the Philadelphia Phillies gave out their largest contract ever to a pitcher just a few days ago, giving Aaron Nola a 7-year, $172 million deal to keep the lifelong Philly in Philly. So what was your immediate reaction when you saw Bob Nightingale tweet 7 years, 170 to 175 million for Aaron Nola?
Didn't believe him. And it's not on the Phillies. It's not on the Phillies. It said that Bob Nightingale, I believe, about as much as I believe read from Animal Crossing, telling me that something is worth a lot of money. But that's another gamer joke for you. But overall, I didn't believe it when I saw Nightingale post it. When I saw other people start posting, I'm like, oh, okay. And to be fair, I wasn't majorly surprised. Like, the guy's been pitching really well for a while now, and he's getting a deal that he's deserving of. The one thing that's definitely a bit of a concern is the length of the contract. 7 years of it at an average salary of just over $24.5 million per year. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2031. But on top of it, that final year will be his age 37 season. An age 37 season for a starting pitcher, that's, unless your name is Jamie Moyer, that you're getting pretty darn old right there. So, I mean, I don't hate the deal because it's very much we're rewarding someone who has done a lot of great work for us and we think will continue to do good work for us. The years will always scare me, but I also know that sometimes it's just a necessary evil.
I mean, I remember when it's just crazy to me how much contracts have changed in baseball. Because I remember when CC Sabathia was like one of the few guys anyone would give a contract like this, especially for a pitcher. I mean, I remember the Yankees gave him that massive contract. Everyone freaked out. I believe that he got like a 7-year contract. It was an insane amount of money, especially at the time. But now, like Nola's contract seems normal for a pitcher. I mean, I remember so for reference, Nola has a career ERA plus of 113. I remember thinking back when Zach Wheeler got his contract with the Phillies, like 5 years, 118 million. Like, there's no way I would give Zach Wheeler that. And now it's like every pitcher gets paid so much money every time they sign. But my only concern really here is that Nola has now had 2 seasons the last 3 years where his ERA plus has been below league average. It was 96 this year. He had a 4.46 ERA. He struck out at least 200 batters for the 5th straight full season. So he's doing great in terms of being a strikeout pitcher. He doesn't walk many batters. his home runs spiked this year. He gave up a career high 32 homers. Overall, his stuff declined. He's going to be on the wrong side of 30, but the Phillies needed to keep him around, in my opinion. They're I know being very aggressive in on the starting pitching market. Apparently, they're going to be aggressive for Yamamoto. I could see them going after a guy like Montgomery, but I think it was more of they needed to shell out the money to prevent Nola from signing with a division rival. I know that the Braves had checked in on Nola reportedly, and I know the Cardinals were seen as a favorite for the for Nola. So I think the Phillies did the right thing here. They gave Nola what he wanted. Apparently, some teams were offering him more money than what the Phillies gave him, but he wanted to stay in Philly. Clearly, the Phillies wanted him. So good for both parties, in my opinion. We'll see how this contract ages. Like Alex said, 7 years is a lot, especially for a pitcher who's over the age of 30. But I think for now, this is a big step step in the right direction for the Phillies. It's a good start to their offseason. I'm really curious to see how else they upgrade their pitching staff.
So I have two takeaways. One, the Phillies fans who are like parading around Twitter saying, yeah, our team is so good, we get our players to take pay cuts. Please go look at your old tweets and make sure you weren't like saying the Braves are like racist or scam artists or like taking advantage of their players when they do the same thing and they get good deals for their players. They get hometown discounts, whatever. So please be consistent, you idiots. Number two, this is just one you had to get done. Nola, to me, has more value for Philly than any other team. He's been there. He's entering his 10th season. You go look at Philadelphia Phillies leaderboards for pitching stats. This is an organization that has been around since 1883. Aaron Nola is top 10 in a variety of categories. Top 10 in strikeouts, top 10 in starts, top 10 in like strikeout to walk. The things you want him to be top 10 in. He's not going to be top 10 in like innings because he's not throwing 500 innings a year like they did in the 1800s. But regardless, he's likely going to be a Philly lifer. He's a guy that, as much as I don't like seeing him on the mound for those Sunday night baseball games and, Aaron Nola versus Max Fried. Yeah, I dread those because Aaron Nola always carves up the Braves. But he's a guy that Philadelphia loves him. He loves Philadelphia. He's pitched in big games. He has a 3.70 ERA, slightly better in the playoffs, 3.70 ERA compared to a 3.72 ERA in the regular season, which both of those are inflated because he pitches half of his games at Citizens Bank Ballpark, by the way. He's going to be a guy that gets you 200 innings a year, 200 strikeouts a year, doesn't walk many guys. And yeah, you can see the strikeout numbers potentially going down a little bit. This year, he was only at 202. The last couple of years, the last 4 years of his run, he was over 220. But his strikeout per 9 was still 9.4. That's still pretty good. And I know the home runs were up, but the home ballpark, that matters here. And Philadelphia is one of the top run scoring environments, very small ballpark. And you're playing the Braves 12 times a year. You're playing Pete Alonso 12 times a year. Like at a certain point, you're going to allow home runs to those guys. At least you don't have to face your own team in that ballpark because that's pretty bad. But
yeah, he doesn't have to face Kyle Schwarber,
Thankfully.
Yeah. Schwarber and Harper would probably take him deep 50 times a year. But this is just a deal that had to get done if you're Philly. The price is almost doesn't matter at a certain point. So good on the Phillies for bringing him back. So there you go. Alex, any last words before we move on?
I just think that overall, like you said a bit, this is just a good move for the franchise itself. Like one of the things that you want to make sure that you love to see is when teams have a player that the fans get attached to, the team gets attached to, and one that's really grown with the franchise. You've got to lock them down. If anything, just to make sure you keep the trust of the fans. You have built up a superstar here. Keep with him. Don't just let him walk away. Like we just had the whole conversation earlier about the Orioles potentially doing this with guys like Rushman. And we saw how much backlash came from that. This is them saying, hey guys, we're not letting that happen. All right, we're keeping our guy. He's here and he's here to stay.
And Nola I'd say he was sort of the beginning of that rebuild because I remember they took him 7th overall in 2014. That was after they had their first losing season in I think over a decade, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, he came up in 2015. He was there for all the rough years, and now he's helped them make the NLCS in consecutive seasons. So I think really he's in some ways been the face of the franchise. I know Harper probably gets. I know Harper was not a homegrown talent, but he with his contract, he's kind of seen as the face in some ways. But I think Nola has had such a huge impact on this organization that it'd almost be weird, I think, to see him playing in another uniform. So I think it was for the best for both him and for the Phillies that he stayed in Philly.
And I'm just going to throw this out there before we move on. Don't be surprised in about 15 years if Aaron Nola is in Cooperstown. This is one of those weird ones that you look across the league and you see, oh, Hall of Fame talent here, Hall of Fame talent there, right? So you have the Miggies and the Vottos and the Goldies and the Freemans and the Kershaws and the Trouts and the Otanis and the Judges, guys like that you just look at and like, oh yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. You look at Aaron Nola and you look under the hood a little bit. Having 5 seasons with 220 strikeouts, having 4 seasons with 220 strikeouts, having 6 seasons now that he's thrown at least 160 innings. Those sorts of things add up. Even in the COVID season, he qualified for the innings title. Those start adding up. Those strikeouts start adding up. And when you have a career with 2,500 strikeouts, 2,700 strikeouts, he's going to get to 100 wins next year if you think wins matter. The Phillies are poised to be a consistent presence in October. He's already at 32 Baseball Reference WAR. If you care about baseball, if you care about baseball, obviously you do. You're listening to a baseball.
Well,
podcast.
yeah, duh.
Welcome back to Losses of Replacement. You like baseball, I hope.
Yeah, so
I hope
he's
so.
already at 32 pitching WAR. So I'm not saying it's a straight 1-to-1. You just map this part of his career onto the second half because we know that's not how it works. We saw Albert Pujols fall off a cliff when he joined Anaheim. But I'm just throwing it out there. Don't be surprised in 10, 15 years, Aaron Nola is in Cooperstown. And it's like, how did he get to 3,000 strikeouts? How did he win, 200 games? How did he do this? Yeah, I think it might happen.
Yeah, I will say this, which is it's kind of hard to fathom that he's only made one All-Star game. And also, it's kind of unfortunate that his best season also happened to be the same year that DeGrom had a 1.7 ERA and Scherzer struck out 300 batters, because any other year he's probably winning the Cy Young in the National League.
Hey, he led the majors in WAR that season, believe it or not.
I mean, this is why Baseball Reference WAR is the inferior measurement.
Hey, listen. Jacob DeGrom did it at a dead ball era ballpark with a suppressed run environment. Aaron Nola did this, I guess it was pre-juiced ball, but did it at Citizens Bank Fly Park. So
I mean,
I'm just throwing it out there.
I agree. It's just that
there's
I don't
probably
know
a run difference in the environments there.
I just know that Fangraphs had him pegged at like a 5.3 or something. I forget the exact number, but it was like half the number that Baseball Reference had.
I don't know. It'd be like that. Listen, a 2.37 ERA when you're pitching half the time at Citizens Bank Ballpark. Pretty good. You know who else is pretty good? Jose Bautista, Adrian Beltre, Bartolo Colon, Adrian Gonzalez, Matt Holliday, Victor Martinez, Joe Mauer, Brandon Phillips, James Shields, Chase Utley, and David Wright. Those are the newcomers to the 2024 Hall of Fame ballot. There's a dozen that are coming back, the Beltrons of the world, the A-Rods of the world. We talked enough about those guys. We'll talk about them again in a couple weeks. But, fellas, who is one player on the Hall of Fame ballot among the first-time players that you want to talk about? It doesn't matter if they're a lock. It doesn't matter if they're not going to be on the ballot next year. Who do you want to talk about? Alex, we'll start with you.
Look, there are two, but I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick the guy that I actually got to meet during All-Star Week, and that is one Adrian Beltre. MLB Power Pros 2008 legend, by the way.
Absolutely.
This guy is someone that I think should be in the Hall. Do his stats show for it? Potentially. But at the same time, like, looking at everything about him was so much fun. Like, that is the word that honestly that I could use to describe Adrian Beltre. He was fun. Every bit about him. He had great relationships with the players. He had even fun relationships with the umpires. No one had a bad thing to say about the guy. One of my favorite moments, even still, when he was a player, was he got jokingly and actually really tossed out of the game because he wanted to do his warm-up swings in a certain area, and they said, hey, you got to be on the on-deck circle. And so he moves the on-deck circle about 5 feet, and they're like, get out of here, you dunny. And I thought it was a joke, but apparently he was actually ejected from that. But okay, sure. No, but he was a guy that everyone liked. Was an amazing ball player, pretty darn good defensive and offensive third baseman, and is known now for being on multiple teams. Probably most famously, I arguably could say the Rangers.
Yeah, Texas first.
Yeah, and man, I love the guy. When he retired, I remember I was in a sports bar watching the game, and I made sure I asked, "Hey, is there a way we could watch this game?" Because I wanted to see the final at bats, the final game of Beltray. Not even because I'm not a Texas Rangers fan. I don't really care for the team, but know who I did care about? Adrian Beltre. The dude was a legend, and I just loved watching him get to play. Loved his little quote-unquote friendship rivalry with Felix Hernandez. Also, by the way, quick little side note, his cameo at Felix's Mariner Hall of Fame induction was the greatest troll job I have ever seen, and I love it so much. For those of you that do not know, what happened is they did a whole video message, all these different players and people, yada yada yada. And then Beltre went out because everyone knew, like, oh yeah, Beltre's gonna talk about Felix. And at the end of his little thing, he goes, you know what? No, I gotta be there for this. Hold on 1 second. And then just starts walking out of the tunnel. And they had a spot for him, but no one knew what the empty spot was for. And he just walks out to thunderous ovation. Like, talk about a classy guy.
All right, Mac, who is one player you want to talk about? Give the limelight to.
This probably surprises nobody, but I'm going to talk about David Wright just because I can't believe he's at we've reached the point that he's on the Hall of Fame ballot, and B, that this is happening way too soon because I think he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and then all the injuries started happening. I just want to point out from 2005 to 2013, he had an 890 OPS, and that includes sort of an injury-plagued 2011 season. The first year at Citi Field, 2009, where he only hit 10 homers. In that stretch, he hit 208 homers. He had 328 doubles. He had 44.4 Fangraphs award. By the way, that last season, 2013, he only played in 113 games, was worth more than 5 wins. He also stole 177 bases that year. So during that stretch, he averaged 23 homers, 93 RBIs, 36 doubles, and 20 steals per season. Even with those injuries, he finishes his career with a 133 OPS plus, 49.2 baseball reference WAR. It's a shame he did not get to finish his career the way we wanted him to, because he would have easily been the Mets franchise leader in home runs. He's the franchise leader in hits. You know, he's the player that, you know, he was my favorite player growing up, and he is still my favorite player of all time, really. I was never particularly good at playing third base, but I always wanted to play third base because of him. I think every kid who grew up in my generation in New York that was a Mets fan would say David Wright was their favorite player. I know another guy on the ballot, Chase Utley, that's what he was to Philly fans. So it's just, to me, I know that he's not going to be on the ballot probably past this year, but I wish that he had gotten to play out his full career and not had his career shortened by injuries, because I think this is a guy who, had he stayed healthy, he would have been a Hall of Famer.
So I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. I'm going to talk about a guy that I think is just underrated, and that's Adrian Gonzalez, another MLB Power Pros legend.
Mets legend, by the way.
Yeah. Although I think we can all forget about his Mets tenure because it just
I'd like to forget about it.
Yeah. So Adrian Beltre from 2006 to 2016, so over 11 years span there, received MVP votes 8 times, finished 4th in 2010 with the Padres, led the league in walks in 2009, led the league in hits in 2011 with that crazy Red Sox collapse season. Led the league in RBI in 2014, consistently had an OPS plus above 125 and even into the 150s in 09, 10, and 11. He's a guy that accumulated about 45 Baseball Reference WAR in that span. He had a couple negatives before and a couple negatives after, but for a solid decade, Adrian Gonzalez was a great hitter. His career, he finished with over 2,000 hits, over 300 home runs, just shy of 1,000 runs scored. He drove in 1,200 runs. He was a consistent 100 RBI guy, a 129 OPS plus for his career, even though he had some lean years at the end and beginning of his career. A really good defensive first baseman as well. And, contributed to 3 teams with San Diego, primarily contributed to 3 teams with San Diego, Boston, and LA. He also had a brief stint with Texas and a brief stint with New York, but just a great player. One of the guys that might not be a Hall of Famer, but I'm glad the Hall of Fame ballot, we see enough of these guys. It's like, yeah, we can appreciate Adrian Gonzalez. We can appreciate a guy who had, 40 WAR, received MVP votes a bunch, was a good defensive player at first, just a good baseball player.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned Agon because he was a player that I know he destroyed the Mets when he was on the Padres and the Dodgers, but I loved watching the way he played the game. He's such a nice left-handed swing. I thought, like you said, I thought he was a great defensive first baseman, and I feel like he is underrated. I mean, I feel like people almost forget he had 40 home runs in a season and how good he was before the Red Sox collapsed. I remember when they put him in right field briefly when they were trying. If you guys remember, and I know that kids these days probably don't know what it's like when the National League didn't have a DH, but I think the Red Sox were at like Wrigley Field, so they put Agon in right, you get third base, Ortiz at
David
first.
Ortiz has to play first.
Yeah, I will say this about his Mets tenure: he hit a grand slam once early in the season, and while he was ice cold for most of it, he did have a multi-homer game against the Padres at Petco Park, so that was pretty sick. But I'll definitely always remember him as a New York Met. I think if he makes it in the slim chances he makes it into the Hall, he's wearing a Mets cap, 100%.
Okay, before we move on, do you think he played more years with LA or San Diego?
That's okay.
Because he played more games with one and then more seasons in the other.
Because he got traded to LA in 2012, and his final year was 2017. Wow, then it's LA, right?
Yeah, 6 years in LA, 735 games, 5 years in San Diego, 799 games.
Wow. Crazy, because I know I joked about the Mets right there, but I primarily remember him as a Padre. That's the team I associate him with the most.
Which, I mean, that makes sense. I get that.
So a couple other guys. Surprised we didn't talk about Bartolo. All 3 of us are.
That was the other guy I was going to say.
Guys.
Besides,
he was in the front of my mind.
Guy. You said one guy, and I had to pick
would he have been the second choice for all 3 of us?
Yes. Yeah, 100% for me at least.
I was thinking Joe Mauer too. I mean,
true. I was also thinking about Joe Mauer. Yeah.
Any love for Brandon Phillips, World Series champion?
I actually saw a post earlier today, just about how underrated he was. That he was like one of the only second basemen ever with like 200 home runs and 200 steals or something like that. So good on him for that.
I just Phillips I know for a while he had some streak. I'm just talking about how Agon killed the Mets. Phillips had some long streak to begin his career where he had a hit in every single game he played against the Mets on the road, like at Citi Field or Shea Stadium. But I thought he played. He could tell that's a guy who loved playing baseball. He had a great personality, really fun personality. And I think some people may forget he had a 30-30 season. He was part of that. I mean, he was part of a trade that involved Bartolo Colon. He was part of the return that Cleveland got when it was him, Cliff Lee, Grady Sizemore, and if I'm not mistaken, Lee Stevens for Bartolo Colon and Tim Drew, the third of the oldest of the Drew brothers, if I'm not mistaken. So There's a little tidbit. He was involved in one of the most lopsided trades of that franchise's history, Montreal at least.
And Brandon Phillips is not recognized on Baseball Reference as a champion, but he did play for the 2018 Red Sox. So we have Ronald Acuna syndrome here.
Oof.
So I'll count it. I'll count it.
I remember he was a Brave for a
He
little
was a
bit
Brave,
too,
briefly.
and an Angel.
Yes, he was before we called up Ozzy in 2017.
Yep, that's right.
Also, Ozzy Albies is about to be in his 8th major league season.
Oof.
Wait, really?
Why are you making me feel
he's still
old?
25. He's still 25
Actually,
in my head, at least. He actually
wait, how old
he
is
might
he?
actually be 25. He is
he 30 yet?
no, definitely not 30. He is 20. He will be 27 in January.
Because I learned today that Seth Lugo is 34, and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking because so 2 weeks from today, my oldest brother turns 35, but
Mhm.
I don't think of Seth Lugo as a 34-year-old because in my head I'm like he's still like a youngish pitcher, and I remember
Yeah.
wait he came up in 2016. That
Yeah.
was
Hey, Jason Tatum is still 19, so it's all
yeah.
okay.
It's like Seth Lugo came up the summer before my junior year of high school, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that was 7 years ago. What?
I had to do the same thing when I started talking about Beltre. I had to fight back the oh no. I was in college at that time. I was
Man.
and being like, wait, that was his last game. Wait, there's no way we're all right talking about him being in the Hall of Fame. No.
Tell me about it.
I know. I remember sitting in my freshman dorm when the news came out that he and Maurer were retiring, and
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
wait, was that really that long ago?
I feel like my phone is starting to dial the AARP hotline. Uh,
Oh no.
Well, you might need another hotline when Mac whoops you in trivia here. So
oh dang.
let's get into it. We are going to test your knowledge of MLB awards, but not the real MLB awards, our MLB awards. Every week on Monday, usually, I tweeted out our Monday MLB mentions, and I had a spreadsheet that I meticulously tracked how many points players got, how many points teams got. So now, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, it is your time to tell me teams that fit these qualifiers, players who fit these qualifiers, and if I could load this sheet properly, that'd be great. So, Alex, Mac, one of you please pick a number between 1 and 100. Alex, go first because you cheat with it.
51.
Mac, choose 50.
I'm gonna choose 42 actually.
Okay,
Nice.
the correct answer was 43. So, Mac,
Whoa.
Let's go.
you go first, buddy.
No, it's funny. Every time that I quote unquote cheat at this, I still lose.
Yes.
So,
Wow.
So, yes, sorry, Mac.
All right.
Your question is first 1 to 5 correct answers wins the day.
okay.
By the way, Mac, your question is which American League team accumulated the most points in the MVP race? So 5 points for first place, 4 points for second place, and 1 point for fifth place.
In the MVP race.
Yes.
Okay, I think
Over the course of the
full season. Yes, over the course of the full season.
Okay,
At least through September 25th, because I don't believe we updated it in October because
I
that was
don't
the
think so.
Yeah.
last week of the season.
So I believe I'm going to go with one because I know they had multiple guys in our top 5. I believe the Tampa Bay Rays.
Tampa was second. They did not have a guy in the top 5 after July 24th. The Shohei Ohtani effect here is very strong. It's just a straight line as soon as he went into first place.
Oh,
I was about to say,
I'm even compute in my head.
Yeah, they kind of lapped everybody there. Alex,
hello.
Your question. Which team accumulated the most American League Cy Young points this season?
See, that one's tougher because at the end is when the Yankees really started I think, pull away when they had Cole. I'm still gonna go with the Yankees.
Yankees said 90, Twins said 83. That is correct.
Let's go.
Alex leads
Wow.
1-0. All right, Mac, your award, our American League Most Improved Player.
Oh, man. Okay.
This one changed hands multiple times throughout
I
the season.
know. And then our winner was, I mean, the voting was kind of crazy for that one. I am going to go with the Texas Rangers.
Texas led briefly around August 1st, but the correct answer, the Baltimore Orioles.
Oh,
They pulled away. We had Bradish getting a bunch of votes. Early on, they had the Mateos of the world.
All right, that makes sense.
Hayes, Santander.
I just remember when we had Kelnick as like number one for like a month.
A
straight.
brief bit, yeah.
Yep. Seattle finished fourth, but they had they didn't proceed. They had 25 points before June or before July, and they ended the season with 27.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yep. All right, Alex.
Hello.
American League Rookie of the Year.
I think this is. I'm gonna go back to the Orioles on this one because I remember that we were talking about at the end of it was Gunnar. Then Gunnar started to care for a while, and at the beginning I think he was part of it. I don't remember 100% though. I'm gonna go with the Orioles.
I regret to inform you that the Orioles is incorrect. The Orioles did not get a point until mid-June. And by that point, both Texas and Boston were over 20 points. Texas
makes sense.
pulled away. Josh Young had even when he was injured, he was still getting third place votes for us. So they were still accumulating, but he had a couple months in a row that he was first. So Alex, you have 1 point. Mac, you're sitting at 0, but you can change that by picking the American League Slow Award winner. This is our best base runner award.
Oh,
Which
boy.
team led in that?
So I believe
for 3 player awards, 3 points for first, 2 points for second, 1 point for third.
I believe we had one guy lead almost all year. So I'm going, and I can't believe I'm saying this team gets any award, but I believe this is the Oakland Athletics.
It is the Oakland A's.
Yes,
They clinched this July 3rd. They had 25 points. Baltimore finished second. They finished with 24. So this was a rout. Alex, hello. American League Silver Sluggers. So there's no ranking here. It's just how many times did their player get included. I'll give you a hint. It was not the Detroit Tigers. They had 0.
That was
the
going to be my
Royals
guess.
also had 0.
Okay. Okay. There are 2 names that are coming to mind. Okay, here we go. I'm going to go with the Angels because they had Ohtani that was giving a bunch. We also, I know, had a few times where I think Trout was part of it, and then I feel like for some little part of it, like Brandon Drury was part of it for a little bit. So I'm gonna go with the Angels.
All of those things you said were correct. Except the Angels finished third. Tampa ran away with it. They had 66 players.
Wow.
Yandy Diaz was in just about every week. Paredes was in a lot. Randy Arozarena was in a lot.
Okay.
They got some love from Josh Lowe. So they had all sorts of guys. Wander Franco was in there, I believe. So they ended up with 66 points. Texas was second with 37. So we had a tie game. Going to American League Gold Gloves for Mac. This one changed hands pretty suddenly with the graph. This was a pretty cool graph to look at. So Mac, which American League team had the most Gold Glove picks for us? Aegis Awards.
So
Baltimore had 0, by the way. That is crazy. Because they had a Gold Glover, right?
They're
maybe not.
Did they? I don't know, but I think they're. I'm going to go with one of their division rivals because I know they had at least 2 that we thought very highly of. So I'm going to go with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Toronto is correct. They finished
Let's
with
go.
64
Nice.
points. They had a couple weeks they were getting 4 guys: pitcher, Varsho, Chapman, Alejandro Kirk, Kevin Kiermaier. They actually might have had 5 in a week, maybe not. But they were always a popular one. Texas had the lead until about halfway through the season, and then Toronto passed them. So Mac leads 2-1, but Alex, you have the initiative here. National League Most Valuable Player.
Yeah, this one's tough, I think. Because there were a few players that were there a lot. I think just for the consistency, I'm gonna go with the Braves. I think the Braves had a lot of players that were near the top, especially one Acuna that's ended up winning it. But I know that there are times where we had Acuna being talked about. We had guys like Olsen being talked about. We had Riley even being talked about at some point. I'm gonna go with the Braves.
The Braves tied for the lead April 17th, took the lead April 24th, and did not look back. They ran away. The Dodgers didn't really make a push until around the All-Star break, actually.
Yeah.
So it ended up Braves 1, Dodgers 2, Marlins in 3, if you can believe that.
Wow.
Well, we liked Luis Ariz really early. So
Oh,
2
yeah.
This is
all.
fair. That's fair.
All right, Mac, National League Cy Young.
Okay, National League
I will
Cy
give you a
Young.
hint. Aaron Nola got 0 votes the entire year.
Well, yeah, I figured as much. I
Neither did any
believe-
of his teammates.
Yeah, so I think here I'm because I know at one point we had at least one player in the top 3, and I think they had one almost every week. I'm going with the Chicago Cubs.
This is one that there's on the graph. As of June 6th or June 5th, the Cubs had 47 points. The Braves had 36. They were in second place. Then they split apart because Bryce Elder became a pumpkin, and we had Stroman and Steele getting votes. So the Cubs are way off. They had a couple of weeks that they were 1 and 2. So the Cubs ran away with this. They had 135 points. San Diego finished the second, 56. Arizona third with 55.
Wow, it wasn't even close. But yeah, the thing
Nice.
is, Stroman got off to that hot start and then cooled off really badly, and then Steele was consistently great until his last 3 starts of the year.
Mm-hmm. All right, Alex, to tie it
So
up here.
I'm up
3-2.
3-2. Okay.
All right. Alex, National League Most Improved Player.
This is one that I don't remember a whole lot about personally, and I feel bad about that. I'm going to go also with the Cubs on this one. I felt like they had some good players that we talked about a good number of times. We're like, wait, how did they come back, or what did they do? So Cubs.
Getting Jeimer Candelario halfway through the season helps here. There were a couple weeks the Cubs had all 3 players.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, we had Candelario, we had Bellinger, we had Steele.
I remember Steele and Bellinger mostly. I forgot about Candelario.
There was one more that we were mixing in there, but they took the lead on July 10th. They overtook the Phillies, who the Phillies didn't have a vote getter after May, but the Cubs ran away with this. They finished with 80 points. Philadelphia had 24. San Francisco 16. So the Cubs that was
close matchup. 3-3 tie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Mac, National League Rookie of the Year. Who had the most points?
I mean, I think just by consistency's sake, I have to go with the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Arizona's correct. They overtook the Dodgers, actually.
Yeah.
In mid-June, did not look back. The Dodgers finished 4th. It was very similar to the Phillies run with the most improved player, that they had a hot start. Miguel Vargas and James Outman were in early, and then they both fall off a cliff. Ended up being Arizona 1, Cincinnati 2, New York Mets 3. Alex, to tie once again. National League Slow Award.
I mean, I feel like I have to keep going on this. Oh, that's actually... I want to go Diamondbacks again here, too, because of Corbin Carroll. But at the same time, he was out for a little bit. And near the All-Star break. because I was afraid whether or not he was going to actually play in the All-Star game. I don't know if that's gonna hurt him enough. Because the other thought I have is Ellie De La Cruz took our spot for a little bit because he is unbelievably fast. I am going to go with the Diamondbacks still. I think Corbin Carroll, the consistency of being over the course of the whole year.
Yeah, that consistency helped him a lot. He was number one in our voting. The final, how many weeks is that? He took the lead in our voting July 3rd. It had been Acuna, largely Acuna. There were a couple other assorted players in there. But the Diamondbacks did win it, 59.5 points. Atlanta second, 47, then a big drop off. Cubs, Milwaukee. If you had picked Reds, that would have been your tied for fifth option with Philadelphia.
I'm glad I got sick to my guts. So tied at 4.
Right. We are still tied. National
4-4.
League Silver Slugger for Mac. This is a tight one. Back and forth the whole year. Who finished on top?
I'm just going to infer because the team hit so many home runs this year and won the team Silver Slugger Award. I know in from MLB's voting. So I'm going to go with the Atlanta Braves.
It took until the last week of the season, but they did it. 52 votes for the Braves, 51 for the Dodgers.
Wow.
All right, so
Olsen overtaking Freeman on the last day helped a lot.
So you're at 5, but I think I get a chance to respond.
No,
here.
I think you're at 6.
No, that was no.
I'm at 5.
We were
I'm at 5. He has a chance to respond.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I don't get this right, Mac wins. If I do get it right, we go sudden death.
Yes. Okay. Alex.
Hello.
National League Gold Glove. I'll give you a hint. It is not the Cincinnati Reds. They were the only team to not have at least 3, actually.
Oh, this one's, again, honestly really tough. I think I have an answer, though. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. I don't know if I'm 100% correct on this one. I'm going Diamondbacks. I think with the players that they had around the infield, and Corbin Carroll especially as well, I think I'm going to go with them.
Well, the Diamondbacks finished in second.
Oh!
It is the San Diego Padres.
Okay.
I wasn't going to get that.
Who overtook Milwaukee in mid-July. Did not look back. They sprinted off. San Diego first with 45. Arizona second with 34, Cubs with 31, Milwaukee 27, Cincinnati bringing up the rear with 0. Having Ha-Seong Kim and Fernando Tatis every single week for 20 straight weeks helps
actually,
a lot.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Arizona, Christian Walker was in most weeks, but outside of Christian Walker, it was a little spotty. Actually, I'll pull up the Mac. Go ahead and give your victory round table, whatever your victory jaunt.
I'd like to thank the Academy. I don't know. I'm too good at this sometimes. Waiting for some competition to show up. I don't know. I'm
taking it from someone that took you to 4-5.
I know.
This is a good point.
I know. It's like when Syracuse almost lost to Louisville last year in basketball.
Here's the thing: is that like every time you talk about competition, to me, all you need to say is double perfect game, and never need to worry about that part.
That was an experience. Yeah.
It'd be like that. So it's Ha-Seong Kim every week after April 24th, Fernando Tatis every week after May 8th, and then one random Trent Grisham. Trent Grisham just hanging out.
They dominated that.
They did dominate that. No other team had 2 consistent players. Even the Cubs, you had Dansby, but Horner wasn't always in there. Pittsburgh and Colorado never had a guy with Key Brian Hayes or Brenton Doyle. The Braves had a guy like sprinkled in, like it'd be Murphy for a little bit, or Rosario or Harris, but no one was like consistently getting points. Mets had a couple guys here or there. Giants had a couple guys here or there. Tara Estrada did a lot of heavy lifting, but congratulations,
who would the Mets have? I mean,
they had Lindor,
David
Peterson, Brandon Nimmo,
David Peterson,
Jeff McNeil,
Okay.
Fernando Alvarez.
Obviously,
Francisco
Daniel
Alvarez.
Vogelbach.
Pete Alonso made it 1 week. Believe
Yeah,
it
I
or
knew
not.
that. I remember that. Yeah.
He was the last Met actually.
Yeah, that makes
He
sense.
made it. Which, with all due respect to Francisco Lindor, because we changed the utility spot changed because Lindor made it the second week, because it's like, how are we figuring out utility spots? There's been
Utility,
10
yeah,
games played.
exactly.
So it was just the second best defensive player. So yeah, Lindor was the shortstop until May 8th, and then Dansby took it, I believe, the rest of the way. Yeah, Dansby took it the rest of the way. So good job, Mac. Would you like to start? Moment to yourself.
I'm not quite ready. So if
Okay.
one of
Alex,
you
I'll
wants
start.
to go,
Yeah,
Are
I'll
you
start
ready?
us off.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
let's
ahead.
do it. All right, so do I have my 3, 2, 1, or just go for it?
Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So I'm gonna talk about something that we've talked about a lot before on the show, and that's mental health stuff. I just want to give a quick little thing of me progressing in my mental health. That is, I finally got to see a doctor recently, and I'm finally starting some medication for the first time in ever actually, and I'm excited to take that next step. Like something that I've been trying to do for a very, very long time, and I'm glad that I could finally actually do it. So, I don't quite know. I'm only about a week or so into it, but you know what? And maybe if me going for it will inspire someone else to go for it, then hey, then mission accomplished.
All right, Mac, would you like to go?
yeah, sure, I'll go.
Okay.
All right. So, like I mentioned earlier, at the beginning of the show, I raced over the weekend, and I'm starting to realize that it's not as easy as it used to be. Well, I could have told you that after my first competition after graduating, but really though, I'm realizing it's more about just like having fun. I competed in a relay over the weekend. I was not expecting to. It was just like they needed one more person for the race, and so I volunteered myself. And I wasn't going to say no to it. And I think I'm starting to realize that I probably shouldn't maybe set too many expectations for myself, because master swimming especially, it's more about having a good time, meeting new people. I met someone over the weekend who happens to be a Syracuse alum too, which I mean that's just a small world moment. And I'll also say this, and take it with a grain of salt, because there are only 2 other people who've raced the event so far this year in my age group, but I am number 1 in my age group nationally in the 200 butterfly this season. So uh, there's about a month left in the year, so maybe I'll get that number 1 next to my name. But yeah, it's still just fun. It's always fun to get up and have some competition.
Right, absolutely. So, guess it's my turn. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't really have anything to talk about today. So, just been one of those days. The power went out, so that was a little weird. I can't sleep at night, which it's actually a new development here. The first 2 months of working night shift was fine, and the last week it's been really rough. Other than that, betting world has been kind to me at times and not so kind to me at times. I made about $700 because the Browns beat the Ravens. And then I have some parlays for Thursday Night Football. Joe Burrow gets hurt, Mark Andrews gets hurt, so you can throw all those out. And then I, with all due respect to Devon Achane, he was in my fantasy lineup, so I'm just going to take his under. Then he has 1 carry for 1 yard, so that was pretty sad. Hope speedy recovery for him. So other than that, and Philadelphia came back to beat Kansas City, so I hit a 11-1 teaser in NFL weekend this week, so that's fun. Any last words before we wrap up the show, fellas?
I kind of miss baseball. I mean, I really miss baseball.
I miss
Amen to
baseball
that.
too.
Amen to that.
I'll say one thing real quick. Whenever Ohtani decides to sign, that day is going to be a special day. and it's a day that maybe we should get on the mic on that day and just to give live reactions. Just maybe.
It's going to be crazy. I mean, I was thinking about last year when I found out DeGrom was signing with the Rangers and like the immediate reaction of that. Like this is going to be, I mean,
Bigger than that,
this
I
is going to
think.
be insane. Because I saw like John Heyman predict he's still going to get 600 million or something, but someone's going to shell out a lot of money for this man, and
Yeah.
it's going to be way more than anyone else has ever gotten.
Yeah, I don't know if he's gonna get that amount of money. We talked about that before, but whoever gets him is going to get one of the greatest players of our generation.
Oh yeah.
It do be like that. Well, with that, thank you guys for tuning into episode 51 of the Losses Above Replacement podcast. I'm Splash. We've been joined with Mac and Alex today. If you love baseball, you can check us out at LAR Baseball, at LAR_baseball on Twitter. You can check us out on YouTube, Losses Above Replacement or LAR Baseball. Feel free to drop a 5-star review, leave a comment. What do you like about the show? What do you not like about the show? Do you think I talk too much? Do you think Alex talks too much? Do you think Mac talks too much? Whatever it may be. So let us know. And maybe next week we can include your topics for Rant Roulette if we run that back. And we have some special Thanksgiving themed content coming up. So hope you guys have a nice evening, nice day, nice morning, whenever you are listening to us. So with that, Alex, roll the outro.
Have a good night, everybody.